Hi, and welcome to this edition of Superintendents Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel. Periodically, we invite the superintendents from the 4 largest school districts in Thurston County to come into our studios and talk about educational issues and our schools locally. And we're pleased also to have with us our 4 superintendents who have been with us before. We have Troy Oliver from the North Thurston Public Schools, Patrick Murphy from Olympia School District, Chris Woods from the Yelm Community Schools, and Kevin Bogatin from Tumwater Schools. So, gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for coming in. I know your schedules are busy, especially this time of year. So we've rounded the corner into a new calendar year, but that makes us about halfway through the school year. I'm going to start with you, Troy. How's the school year going this time compared to last year?
The school year is going quite well, especially compared to last year. A couple of the key benchmarks, and Kevin talked about it the first time we met about transportation. We still, I think Kevin said the same thing previously, have not had to cancel a route. Our staffing levels are up. Staff are showing up and getting kids to and from school, so that's a huge positive. And the same thing's true with our substitute pool. Our substitute pool has increased, and we haven't had unfilled teacher classroom positions, but just a few here and there. So that's huge for our staff. They don't have to cover someone's planning period. They get to focus on what's going on. And I think that helps just morale and everything else that's happening in the school. Other than that, we just started, as you said, the second semester. Some kids have transitioned classes or are in semester-long classes, and that's going well. Grades will be coming out pretty quick, so we'll have some parents that are paying maybe attention to that coming out soon.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Patrick, how about you and Olympia?
Well, this week we had our first test of snow, whether or not we were going to close schools or not, and we were just talking earlier this morning how we all feel pretty fortunate we got through it without having to cancel a day.
This was a weird weather week.
Yeah, but nobody's got to make up a day at the end of the year or take up a snow day or something. So some of our students weren't as happy about that, but we were pretty happy about that. I think I mentioned last time, Deb, it's been a good year in Olympia. We've all been struggling with financial challenges and things, and we've had some particularly tough years. The last couple of years had to make some pretty dramatic cuts, and this year our enrollment came in a little bit up, which I think we talked about before, which was a little unexpected. And I think I may have mentioned that the enrollment increase was not because we had a bunch of families move into town and we got new construction. We had a bunch of families that were already living in Olympia that had removed their kids from our schools 4 or 5 years ago and came back, which is sort of a COVID rebound.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, COVID rebound. And so I don't know how much longer we can rely on that. Do we get them back and that's it? Or are we going to get some more? But we have a facilities planning group that's meeting right now doing some long-term thinking about not just enrollment, but how's education going to change? And that's really exciting. It's seeding some really cool conversations. We're doing really great professional development around the Danielson framework that I may have mentioned before, that's really just thinking about how we can better serve the kids that we have. And just overall, it's just felt like a really positive year. And now we'll see what happens in the legislative session, which I know we're going to talk about later.
We'll talk about that soon. Chris, how's Yelm doing?
Well, it's been a very challenging, but also very positive first half of the year. As I mentioned in the fall and last spring, we had a double levy failure last year and had to cut roughly $10 million. And with that cut was a lot of staff, about 100 positions. So that certainly is the challenging side of things, but the positive side of it is it has been amazing to watch our staff this year. Yes, they're tired. Yes, they're wearing maybe more hats than normal. But people are, they're showing up every day. They're working hard. They're trying to provide the very best for kids. They don't want our students to recognize any difference, even though there are differences from last year to this year based on the cuts that we had to make. But I've been so impressed with our staff and the way that they are showing up each day and choosing to make it the best experience possible for our students. And then in addition to that, we've also been given the opportunity to tell our story through the many forums that we've had for the levy, which actually next Tuesday is election day for a levy. And so we've really had an opportunity to tell our story and talk to our community. And again, our staff, we have a couple community groups that have been helping us. So a lot of positive, even though we're in a really challenging time.
Kevin.
We wish the best on the levy,
Yes, we do.
because we could all be there in a heartbeat. So I think we all know that's like that, and it's so critical. Like the levy, we rely on the levy to do so many basic operations and a lot of extra things in our community. So we're super fortunate to have those pass. And I know a year ago, that's what we were all talking about. We're definitely dealing with a budget crisis, and maybe I'll share that when we talk a little bit about some of our states. So let me stay a little bit more positive. One thing that happened in the legislature this last cycle was free lunch. They kind of lowered some thresholds in the state of Washington. So I have 5 of 6 elementaries who are getting free breakfast and lunch every day. And I think we kind of sometimes underestimate the impact that has just in terms of learning, and I think that's appreciated by our community. I know the legislature is working on maintaining that and continuing it, potentially expanding that. So that's a positive thing that's going on. I will echo, I can't go without saying on transportation, because I think, for the families and students in Tumwater who have been going an hour late, 2 hours late, almost every day for the last 3 years, to have a year where no late routes, they can count on the bus showing up. We see ridership as high as it's ever been. So that's a really positive thing. And I'd say the last thing for us is, I'm about, I would say knee deep, waist deep, I don't know, in strategic planning. And so we haven't had a strategic plan really active since about 2016, 2018. So we're doing a robust community-wide strategic planning process that our school board's looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. We've had a lot of participation already, and so that's a really exciting thing for us, and will really give us some guidance and structure and kind of getting us all pointed in the right direction in the years to come.
Can we stick with transportation for just a second? Because Patrick mentioned the weather this week, which was a little weird. And I get the sense from some folks that I've talked to that they don't understand how the decision is made to either have a late start or not have a late start, primarily because of the weather this week. We had an icy morning on Monday, and there was a late start. And then on Tuesday, there was snow coming down, and there wasn't a late start. And then yesterday, was it Wednesday, there was a late start, and it was clear. So I've had this conversation with folks before, so I know how it's made, but maybe our viewers are not really, they don't maybe understand how do they come to these decisions. So does somebody want to field that question?
This guy was out on a truck driving around at 3:30 in the morning and yelled.
If we look a little tired, it's like we've been up early here.
So,
I don't mind sharing. I think we've also talked a lot about you don't ever get prepared for making these decisions. We don't go to superintendent school to find out how to do a late start or cancel school, but we always keep in mind, particularly our student drivers. And we think about them a lot when we're making decisions. But typically, I'm on the road at about 3:30, 3:45 with 2 other staff members or transportation department director and assistant director. We've split our district into thirds. We've got our areas we cover. Mm-hmm. We try to make a decision based on the roads by 4:30, because that would be when our drivers would be heading into work. And we like to make that decision before they hit the roads. And a lot of people don't think about our drivers driving their cars into work to get into buses to then pick up our kids. And then we typically, 5:15 to 5:30, send out a message to our families and let them know. One of the challenges is oftentimes between the time that you've made the decision and the time that the weather gets bad,
right.
You might already have buses on the road.
Right.
And so you can't just say, oh, we're going to stop. You've got children out at bus stops. You've got parents that have already gone to work. So we've got to move forward as cautiously as we can. But we're always going to err on the side of caution. We would much rather have another day of school than taking the risk of losing a student or one of our family members or one of our staff getting in an accident. I will take another day of school any day over the chance that we might lose somebody or somebody gets in an accident.
And I had that exact conversation with a 12-year-old in my life who was like, I don't know why we have school today. And I kind of went, well, they make these decisions really early.
Yeah.
And then they move forward and the snow started at 6:30. So it's, by that time, you can't really, change horses at that point.
The other part is we're all in pretty big geographic areas. Right. Even Olympia, that's pretty condensed. We go out a long way out to Summit Lake, and there's variance across different geographic areas. So we've had people say, I can't believe you went 3 hours late today. It's fine here. It's like, well, it was really icy on the west side of town or up by Summit Lake. So we're taking all those into effect. The other thing you think about before you close school is there's a lot of families that get their basic needs met at school. And so we want to err on the side of safety, but we also want to make sure that we're not necessarily canceling school when we don't have to, because kids rely on that. But I think one of the things that we all agree on, and maybe, at least speaking for me and Olympia, we can do a better job of this, is we make the best decision we can, and then families have to make the best decision for them, because of that variance. So if you're living somewhere and it's icy, stay home until it warms up and come in late. We'll excuse it. You stay home altogether, we'll excuse the absence and we'll come in. So, we make the best decisions we can. We have staff out there, like Chris said, really early in the mornings, and sometimes we go late because we know the longer we go, the roads will clear up a little bit, all of those things. Were you going to say anything, Troy?
The only thing I would add is a snow day presents an opportunity for lots of feedback, and we hear it, and we do get feedback, and sometimes it's like, well, 2 districts did something. To Patrick's point about the geographic area, we're very close together, and right. People think about the school districts as similar. And we have staff that live in Tumwater, their kids go to school in Tumwater, so it impacts them. But we come back to safety. Yeah. It really has to be about what's the most safe things for our students and our staff, and all those other things. We know they're an impact. We're not oblivious to those sort of things, but we make the best decision we can for kids.
And as Patrick pointed out, our community, we are driven by little microclimates. I live on the east side at the top of the hill, and I've got up in the morning and there's been snow on the ground, an inch, a half an inch, whatever, and I've gotten to this building on the west side, perfectly green, so just in that 3.5 miles or whatever it is, 4 miles, So anyways. So
I worked in a school district where we actually closed part of the district, or we went late in part of the district, and it was a nightmare. And everything is connected. So people are like, well, why can't you just do this? It has a ripple effect across the whole thing. Right. So we make decisions for everybody that people, like you say, can't see.
Especially with bus transportation, because the buses go pick up
and
deliver to this school because it starts at this time, and then they go pick up the students to deliver to that school because it starts at a different time. So
I'm feeling like a meteorologist at this point. We're watching the weather, and then we're driving around, and it's not easy. We take it super serious. I think to that point. I was in a district previously where the district didn't cancel school. There was a head-on collision, ended up killing multiple people that worked for the school district, the ESD. It's like, so, those are things that's like, my whole time in that district, there was sort of those moments and reminders of that major crash that, and I know the superintendent that was working, that was right before me. We talked about that, and that kind of haunted him for a long time. People are blaming him for, and so, not that, we take it seriously. Right. We try to make the best decision. We tend to err on the side of caution. It is
safety first.
Yeah, and it is not easy decision. Especially, I think we all wish it's like to wake up and it's like 6 inches of snow and oh, thank you.
Easy.
That makes it easy.
We're at 6 inches of snow. We're definitely canceling school.
When it's that wintry mix, that's like thick rain and some snowflakes, and it's just like
32 degrees.
Right.
Like this week
is it going to freeze? Is it not?
Yeah.
And it looks like we have another week of a little bit of challenges as it gets into the teens, and we'll see.
It always seems to be end of January and February. That's the period of time when we seem to get it. So anyway, so thank you for helping to clarify that, because I know some folks I know had questions. So thank you for that. Also now that we're into a new calendar year, and we're also into a new legislative session. So we have a new governor. We have a returning director of OSPI. Chris Reichdahl was reelected to his position. So what's the ledge doing, and are you happy about it, Patrick?
Well, I will say this, and we've been doing this a while, Deb. You've probably heard there's a $10 to $15 billion state deficit. And so starting in December, we were already getting messages like, lower your expectations. And I am strangely, cautiously hopeful. And the reason why I say that is because partly the governor came out and said, we have to tighten our belts. We got to make some cuts, but K-12 is not the place to do that. We've really not met our obligations from McCleary, and we've got more work to do. That's one reason. The other reason is whether it is the Superintendents Association, WASA, whether it's the Principals Association, AWSP, whether it's the Teachers Association, WEA, the School Directors Association, WASDA, PTA, we've all been testifying up on the Hill. We've all been parts of different things. There is a congruent, coherent message. And in years past, it was like all over the place. Like, oh, well, they got regionalization, we didn't. Hey, what are you going to do about this? We're all saying the same thing, and it's the big three. And the big three are MSOC, which stands for Materials, Supplies, and Operating Costs. It's stuff, not people. Special education, that we've talked about time and time again, and what we were just talking about, transportation. And if the state really took care of those three things, all 295 school districts would benefit greatly, and it would allow us to do a lot of the things that we need to do.
That would free up a lot of money in your budgets.
And so there's been some bills presented on the two, MSOCs and special education, that would really take care of most of the deficit that we take out of our local enrichment levy. We've talked about that before. Enrichment levy to pay for special education, it just doesn't make any sense. So I'm not saying that we're going to get everything, and I don't have a crystal ball, but like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Maybe we want to jump in and.
Yeah, it can be really challenging when you've got an outgoing governor who presents a budget. You've got an incoming governor presenting a budget. You got the House, you got the Senate, you got the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And so there's a lot of moving parts in it. The reason I'm optimistic is not because of the new administration, not because of leadership. I am optimistic because of educators. And as Patrick was saying, I think what I've noticed this year more than any other year in my career, where all the groups that Patrick just mentioned coming together around a couple things that are important to all of us. And as Patrick mentioned, those MSOCs, special education and transportation, these are all things that all districts can benefit from if they fully fund those areas, because we are subsidizing those areas tremendously with levy dollars and general fund dollars that could be used for things that would help our students. And so the reason I'm optimistic is because I think for maybe the first time in a real long time, we're coming together as educators, regardless of your position as an educator, regardless of your geographical location in Washington. We seem to be coming together for a common goal. And so I think I have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about that.
Good.
I'll give you the district context of what this really means to us, kind of more financially. And I know there's a conversation around this. Always seems to be about money, which is what I'll talk about. But that ultimately is like the mechanism for us to make the impact. And you can talk about the needs in special education or needs that we have academically. We do that through resources through the legislature, federally, locally. So it's not like the legislature can do some things. I mean, they could, but they tend not to do that. Like, hey, we're going to do some reading curriculum and help you support that. It ultimately comes down to money. Special education, our gap is $1.4 million from what we get a portion from the state to what, and so again, that needs to come from somewhere. Our levy dollars tend to be kind of close the gap. Like we talk about materials, supplies, operating costs, things like insurance have increased from 2017 to the current year 144%. So a cost of like $700,000 to $1.8 million. So significant increases. The state has not kept up with that. The last legislative session, they added money to that category. It's like $23 per kid. That gap that I'm just describing there is like a $300 per kid gap. So we're a long ways away from funding. On transportation, and I know we're all different in how that, I think I have a pretty large geographical of where I have to send some kids. So our gap is $1.2 million on an annual basis. So the gaps are significant, and I'm cutting. On top of that, we've kind of maybe haven't done some self-correction from some previous ESSER and COVID things. So we're in the midst of cutting about $6 million, $6.5 million for the next coming year. All of these things will have an impact, but my district, I know it probably hasn't gone completely public. We're going to go negative, cash balance negative, for the first time probably ever in Tumwater. we're not going to end the year negative, but because we've made some different decisions and freeze travel, freeze hiring, freeze some things. But that's pretty scary. I mean, for a superintendent, that's how we pay the bills. That's how I pay teachers and our staff to come to work every day. So I have to borrow money. In this case, we borrow it from our capital account to just pay the bills. And that, not a comfortable place for a school board, for a community to be in.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think that I'm optimistic as well, and I think part of that is these messages not only consistent, I think the general public and the legislature can understand them. They can understand the needs of a special education student and that not being fully funded. And we have throughout the state clearly articulated those dollar amounts in our system, about $7 million that's coming out of local funds to fully fund special education in our district. And then material supplies and operating costs, everybody knows the cost of food, services, insurance.
Utilities.
I mean, our insurance has gone up significantly over the last few years, and it's been a real big hit. And of course, what the state supplies for that not even come close. And people can understand that because they're feeling that in their own home's budget as well. So it's pretty obvious, and they know that the public education is the paramount duty of the state. And then the other piece is, post-McCleary, it was over 50% of the state's budget. It's dropped down to 43% of the state's budget. So that's a pretty significant gap when you talk about the amount of money that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'll say one other thing about special education, because we've talked about it a lot. Our gap is $6.3 million that we're taking out of our local levy to offset the shortfall in special education. Over $4 million in MSOC. So those two things alone, if we had that, imagine if we had $10 million to do enrichment. What would we actually do in our schools that would be pretty darn cool in getting specialists and classrooms and after school activities, but we're spending it on literally toilet paper and a federally mandated program in special education. But you might recall, Deb, we talked in special education about the two things, the cap and the multiplier. And those are two things in the bills that I mentioned that I think are pretty favorable. One, there's a couple of bills out there that eliminate the cap. And the cap's right now at 16%.
Right.
So we are over 16% in the Olympia School District. Yeah, I just hit the mic.
So meaning 16% of your
Total kids are
total
receiving special
population.
education
Okay,
services, right?
And so it's capped at
16,
16%.
and we're at about
They will
16
fund
and a
up to
half.
16, okay.
Yep, and if you count our preschool programs, we're over 18. So getting rid of that cap we're probably gonna move higher than that number, and we're already higher than that number. The thing about the cap right now is if the state eliminates that, it really won't cost them that much money because the state overall average is a little bit below 16% right now. So some people are gonna get money and some people won't. Like last year when it went up to 16, I think Olympia benefited more than pretty much any district in the state because we have a large percentage of kids with pretty profound needs receiving special education service. But I want to just talk about the multiplier real quick because the multiplier is really where we're all going to get help. Because every time a kid walks into one of our schools, they're a general education kid first, and then they receive special education services. And I always use the number $10,000 because it's round and it's easy to do the math with, and it's not that far from the truth. So every kid comes in, gets $10,000 if they're a general education kid. If they're receiving special services, there's a multiplier against that 10,000 that gives us extra money to fully serve that kid. And the multiplier right now is 1.06 or 1.12. So if I multiply 10,000 by 1.06, I get 10,600. Put it together, I've got $20,600 to serve that kid. If that kid's getting speech and language services a couple of days a week, it's not a really complicated IEP, that works beautifully. But a large percentage of our kids, we have over 500 kids in the Olympia School District that are in self-contained classrooms, diapering, toileting, there's assistive technology, there's one-on-one paraeducators work. It doesn't even come close. And we've done an analysis in Olympia, and if that 1.06, 1.12 was a 1.5, it would actually take care of our $6.3 million deficit. And there is a bill to move that up to 1.5 or more. Yep. So it's more complicated to talk about. The cap is easier to, I think, describe. But if they change that multiplier, it will have a massive impact on all of us, regardless of the percentage of kids that are receiving special education, which contributes to our deficits.
So you would be able to serve your students with special education needs and free up all of that money to do other stuff.
To do enrichment.
Yeah.
It's an enrichment levy,
Yeah.
which our kids with special needs would benefit from, because those things benefit everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's it look? I mean, these bills are being presented. Has anybody like taken the temperature of?
Well,
the
we
electeds
don't
to
have
see what
crystal
they're-
balls,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and we are very fortunate in Thurston County that we have, I think, really strong legislators that really understand our issues. But they also have competing interests like we do, and whether it's homelessness, transportation, all sorts of things. But none of those are the state's paramount duty, according to the state constitution. So, you know.
They took some action this year that I think maybe was a little bit different. You know, they moved out of committee pretty fast within the first week and a half. Those bills were testified and moved
right
out of
along.
committee. And if they don't get out of committee, they die. And that deadline's coming up. So they're in Ways and Means. They're doing hearings in a pretty timely manner. So there's some serious conversation about actually funding these.
Long session, April 27th.
Yeah,
I think.
Like a long session.
we got a ways to go before it becomes reality, but I think I think all of us want to be hopeful. I'm guessing our business folks, just tell you, settle down,
Yeah.
Patrick, don't
Yeah.
get too
Yeah.
excited.
So should these bills, so should this be successful and something comes out, maybe not 100% of what's being requested, but a chunk
Right.
comes. When does that hit your budgets? Is it instantaneous or is it
September.
like 2 years or
For next school year.
next?
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
starting in the fall,
Yep.
you would
Yes.
see, oh, wow, that'd be great.
Yeah, there's different measures.
Yeah.
I know we're looking at, we do a levy and we're capped in the levy. A bill like that would, if that passed, where they lift the levy, would impact us more like January of next year, sort of on a tax
That'd be-
cycle.
Well, that's a whole other issue that Kevin just brought up. So we know that the levy was brought down after McCleary. We couldn't collect what we wanted to, and I think all of us leave money on the table that our community had approved or will approve next week in Yelm, and so that if they change that levy language and allow us to take the amount that better benefits the district, that's millions of dollars for us. They're talking about lifting that levy number. Here's the interesting thing, and this kind of goes to what Chris was saying, that there's some benefit in these difficult times. There's 5 school districts in the state of Washington that are in binding conditions. Is Yelm one of them?
Yep.
Yelm is one of them. There's 19 school districts that are in something called financial warning status. Seattle, North Shore, big school districts. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids that is another reason why the legislature knows that they have problems, but this is pretty dire. And they need to do something about it now. And that type of collective problem is a big driver for why the legislature might do something.
Yeah, the cash negative is going to get some folks' attention.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I may not be on the list, but it's sort of like a little lagging.
Right.
Soon to come.
Right, right. Well, fingers crossed that the legislators listen and understand and do the right thing.
They seem to be doing a great job
Good.
at this time.
So this is not the only structural, governmental issue that is potentially facing schools. And not to get into the weeds too much, but there is so much discussion in the other Washington about either significantly reducing the size of or potentially completely eliminating the Federal Department of Education. And, I don't want to get into the political weeds on this, but I'm wondering, I don't know that folks watching this understand the relationship between the Federal Department of Education and the states and how that impacts the locals, or even if there is a direct relationship between local districts and the Federal Department of Education. So somebody want to just kind of like enlighten us a little bit about what changes at that level mean to the local school districts?
So we've talked a little bit about that as area superintendents, and first of all, we rely heavily on OSPI to really keep us up to speed on this, because most of the money that comes to us from the federal government comes through OSPI in the form of Title I grants or special education, and the reality of it is, well, first of all, at least speaking for North Thurston, we're not going to make decisions on what may happen, but we're paying attention to it, because there could be some implications. But the reality of it is I think it's about 7% of the K-12 budget is from the federal government.
7%.
7%. So it's not like catastrophic. That would have
But
an
it's still a
impact.
big chunk.
Still a big chunk.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little over 5% of that is specifically tied to Title I programs. and special education programs. And those, I can't see a scenario where either one of those goes away, even at the Department of Ed. They may be overseen by a different department, but that's in the law in terms of those resources. So we'll see what happens in the long run, but right now we're paying attention, but I don't think anybody's acting in a budgetary manner based upon the what ifs.
The what ifs,
Yeah.
and it's all what if at this
Yep.
point. You know? Okay, thank you. Well, let's move on to really local stuff. New facilities, new technology plans, what's on the drawing board for the rest of this year and moving forward? Start with you.
Well, for us, we're on the tail end of a bond where we built a new middle school, new elementary, upgraded athletic facilities, put in some field turf around the district, and also safety and security measures. And one of the last projects is a remodel at our transportation department, which desperately needs it. And so that's the last big project. And obviously, given our circumstances, most of our focus is in the classroom right now on instruction. Yes, we do have some other projects going on around the district maintenance, and especially this time of year. There are a lot of projects that we try to get done during poor weather, especially indoor ones. But for us, there are some things on hold right now, and it'll be determined based on what happens here in the coming months. Not that those capital projects dollars can be used for learning, and the learning ones can be used for capital projects. However, we're going to be doing what Kevin spoke to earlier, strategic planning this spring. Regardless of the outcome of the levy next week, we're going to be charting our course forward. And so tying up loose ends on the previous capital projects bond, but then getting ready to chart our course forward.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, we have a capital levy, and I think a lot of times that is they're being done things that no one sees. It is making sure our boilers are working and upgraded and those things. Some things that are noticeable this year, we did some upgrades in parking, so kind of a parent drop-off at Black Hills High School, parent drop-off at a couple of our elementary schools. So just to kind of make that more efficient, free up some space, a little additional parking. We have some overcrowding at our elementary school, so we do have a committee coming together, a facility, kind of looking at what some possibilities. Probably looking at a bond, not necessarily in the really near future, so I don't think in the next 12 months, but in probably not next school year, but the year after. I think we'll probably be looking really seriously at some kind of facility bond proposal, one to reduce some overcrowding.
Mm-hmm. Troy?
Yeah, we have quite a few pretty significant projects going on. We just completed, as part of the 2020 bond, the complete modernization of Camacho Middle School, and that's complete. We do not have any portable classrooms on that campus anymore, so I mean, it just turned out fantastic. We're in the middle of a major remodel at River Ridge High School. It's a significant project for us, and it's a phased project that is about 2 more years before it's completely done. But we opened up the most significant, the new commons there, which is fantastic. And the old commons at River Ridge High School was insufficient for the population of students there, and it was nowhere near as well done as Timberline High School and North Thurston High School that had been recently remodeled. So now they're on par with a fantastic facility that is just opened in January. And then next fall, to start the school year, we're going to open up the new classroom wing, which is 72 classrooms, 2 floors, and we'll be able to get rid of all of the old classrooms on that campus. And it's going to completely transform that site. It'll be completely like North Thurston. Safety and security is a big deal. The River Ridge campus used to be, or was and is, 4 different classroom buildings all outside. Kids would have to come and go all the time. So it just didn't work for this time of year. Kids being outside in the elements, and it didn't work for safety and security either. So the new building is going to be absolutely amazing. And then a couple other projects we're working on. The old Bally's off Sleater Kinney, we purchased that a number of years ago. We're transferring that into, we're calling it the RMAC South Raj Mohan House Activity Center. We have a basketball court that we put in on the side of that building nearest North Thurston High School when North Thurston was remodeled to help us with that project. And now we're taking care of the other side of that building where it used to be the basketball court and the pool and all that for people that have been in our community for a long time. That'll house our partnership with the Southside Reading Foundation. They will move back into that place. Our Family Youth and Resource Center will move back into that location, as well as archives will now have a new home in that building on the first floor. And the second floor will be Ignite Family Academy, which is a school we started as a homeschool family partnership, not dissimilar to Orla in a lot of ways. And they'll have the complete second floor. And we have about 100 students at the current campus that we have that's kind of a makeshift school in the interim. We'll be able to double the capacity in the school, and we already have like 50 kids on a wait list and families for when that opens up in the fall. And then the last thing I'll mention is the Young Child and Family Center, which is our partnership with the City of Lacey and YMCA can have a piece there, and then also Lacey Timberland Library, and it's an early learning center. And it will be on the site adjacent to Nisqually Middle School. Our board just approved conceptual design last night. We're going to put a shovel in the ground about 12 months from now, and that should be up and open by the fall of 27. And that will be 18 classrooms for early learning, our 3 to 5 year old preschool age students, and serving up to 500 kids, which is intentional. That is about the number of kids who enter kindergarten in our district that don't have any formal preschool or educational experience. So we're trying to close that gap and get kids ready for kinder programs in our district. So we're really excited about that.
Lots of fun stuff coming
Yeah.
forward. Patrick,
A
Olympia.
few things on the facility side. One is we're just finishing up some things from our last capital and safety levy around safety vestibules in schools. We got a few left to do that with, and some of those buildings are tricky. Like Lincoln Elementary School was built during the Harding administration. That would be in the 20s. 1920s.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to figure out how to put a safety vestibule in there, but we're gonna figure that out and finish up some HVAC stuff.
Building.
It's
Such a
beautiful.
fun
It's such a
building,
cool
yeah,
place.
yeah.
It's actually the mirror image of the old Knox building, which is Avanti High School right now. But so we're going to be finishing up those projects. We had a really fun partnership with a local solar company, and we put a bunch of solar panels on top of Thurgood Marshall Middle School. And that's powering things out in the community, but we actually get some credits back from that, and I think we just got a check for like $13,000 that we can use for other purposes, and it's coming in at like 112% of what they were expecting, so it's actually doing better. And I think it would power like 12 regular normal homes annually with those solar panels on top of that, so that's pretty cool. And then the last thing I would mention is we have a long-range facilities planning group that's meeting right now. And it's part of our district policy that we do that every 10 to 15 years, and it just happens to be up. And we're having this conversation right after we talked about enrollment and school closures. And so it's kind of like, my initial thought was, let's just have that conversation and let's just kind of temper expectations. And then I had a lot of community members and staff members saying, why would we miss this opportunity to really think differently about schooling moving forward? So it's really become this cool conversation about outdoor learning and service learning and sharing resources across schools, and we're just throwing everything on the table and having this really fun conversation about what school could look like in the future, and that will drive bonds in the future and things that we might do.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time, but I always want to give you an opportunity to talk about those very special moments. I know you all go out into your schools on a regular basis, and I know there's special, exciting things that happen, and things you want to pat yourself on the back or pat other people on the back. So I'm going to start with you, Kevin. You got some special moments from the last couple of months?
There's a couple things that are really exciting. We just started transitional kindergarten, so they just opened up in January, and so we've been doing this is first for Tumwater. We have a huge need for preschool education, not only in Tumwater but across our entire region.
And that age group is?
This age group is 4 years old, so not ready for the. They'll be 5-year-old kindergartners next year. So this is kids that typically don't have access to preschool education. So visiting those places and having the little 4-year-olds come up and grab your hand, and I had one that wanted to make sure all dressed up doctor and wanted to check me out and make sure I was okay. I got a carrot shot, so all was good. So just to see them interacting with, and just they learn some of those basic skills. It's a play-based education, but they're learning how to interact with each other, learn how to line up and listen for story time. And so they'll come in. We're really excited about kind of coming in. And I know our other district partners have seen this, and we continue to try to invest in that transitional kindergarten and hope the state continues to fund it properly. The other thing I want to mention, we have the White House announced the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, and we have one of those, Christy Martin, a science teacher at Black Hills High School, so got awarded that. And so it comes with a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation, invitation to Washington, D.C. And so, we have embedded in all of our school districts, these just outstanding educators doing outstanding work. Christy's just one example of that. I mean, they're just everywhere. And we don't, it takes a national award maybe for us to bring them up here, but we have them every day, and they're doing great work, and we're super proud of those folks. So.
Great. How about in North Thurston?
Yeah, so I'll just highlight our native programs and our relationship with the Nisqually tribe is as strong as it has ever been. We have the Billy Frank Jr. Day coming up that we've done as a community evening event annually, so that is coming up here. And then the last thing is WASDA does an annual training for and that's the School Directors Association. They do an annual training on government-to-government relationships. And they reached out to us and said, hey, we know you've been doing this. Would you be the presenters at a conference, which is going to take place in March down in Ridgefield? So we're honored to be thought of as a kind of a leader in that work. And we'll bring our tribal partners down there from the Nisqually tribe and answer questions and tell our story about what we've done, and people can take that and do with it what makes sense for their community. So we're excited about that recognition.
Great, congrats.
Well, I was going to share a couple things, but these two jogged my memory on a couple of things. We're so grateful to the Squaxin tribe and the work we've been doing. We just did a flag raising ceremony at the district office, and we're going to do site-based ceremonies at all of our schools on the same day in May with members of the tribe. That's just great work, and just adds to all the work that we're doing just to incorporate that throughout our curriculum in our schools. We also have a Presidential Math and Science Award winner with Spencer Olmstead, one of our teachers over at Roosevelt Elementary School. I believe there's like 110 total teachers nationally that got that award. One in Tumwater, one in Olympia, so very cool. But I wanted to share something about Orla that Troy mentioned earlier, and some things at Capitol. So at Orla, we had a young lady write a letter to become the mayor for the day at Olympia, and wrote this really nice letter about serving those that maybe have been underserved and are less fortunate. And so she got to go and be with Mayor Payne for the day and do a lot of work, which was pretty cool. And then the other thing, I was at Orla the other day, and this kid was like really excited. And he said, oh, you need to come see this out on this deck where they keep plants and stuff outside. And there's this little tiny sapling of a pine tree out there. And he's like, oh, what do you think? And I was like, I didn't think much about it. I mean, yeah, it looks like a little pine tree. Well, he's like, you don't like our moon tree? That little sapling was a seed on the Artemis spaceship in 2022, went around the moon, came back, and has been planted. And there's like, maybe 1,000 of them across the country, and Orla has one of them. And they're going to end up planting it in the ground there. So, and they're learning all about space in that process. You mentioned the snow last week. I was at Capitol High School when, we went on time, and then it snowed like crazy. Yeah, like right here, because Capitol's right up the street. And I'm like, oh no, I'm really scared. Like, what are we going to do? And of course, it all melted. But at the Capitol High School that day, there were two things that people talked to me about. One was the Capitol High School girls flag football team. The NFL is sponsoring girls flag football. I think the WAA is going to decide whether or not to make an official WIA sport. Everybody that I talked to said it is so awesome. Olympia High School's been doing it for a while. Capitol, I think, has a regional playoff game today. Their quarterback's amazing. It's just super positive. I had the athletic director saying it's one of the most positive things I've done in athletics in a long time is doing that work. So flag football, huge. It's the fastest growing sport with teenagers, according to some survey out there. And then the last thing I would share is that when I was at Capitol that day, the principal, Condi Wood, she's new this year, but she used to be the principal at Thurgood Marshall, and she's just an amazing educational leader. And she said, I want to show you something. And we went to an algebra classroom. And in our high schools, algebra is kind of like the entry-level math class, right? Most kids would do a track where they would go algebra as a freshman, geometry as a sophomore, algebra 2, and then pre-calculus. And if you're struggling in math coming out of middle school, algebra's rough. And so she said, we're going to walk in here, and about 40% of the kids in this class are receiving special education services. And this is a team teaching model. There's about 28 kids in the class. There's a regular math teacher in there, special education teacher in there. And she said, when we look at our data, this class scores the highest on our algebra assessments as we compare it to all the other classes across school. And I'm like, wow. So I walk in there. I don't know who's who, but I'm going around and I'm talking to different kids. I'm asking how it's going. I said, have you been in here since the first day of school? They're like, yeah. I go, how do you like it? I love it. And I said, well, what are you working on now? She's describing some sort of graphing project that she's working on. And of course, the principal's telling me a story saying, oh, well, that kid was really struggling in this and that. It's kind of just an example of where we need to go to better serve kids with special needs, getting them into mainstream classrooms with their peers, because you raise those expectations that you can do it. Team teaching, not isolating and making kids feel like other, and showing that they can do the work. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. And there's things like that happening in all of our districts, but I was just particularly impressed with the teachers that were doing that at Capitol High School. I'm very grateful to share that.
Thanks. Last but not least.
Yeah, I think a couple things come to mind. Number one, you mentioned, us getting out, and for me, that's a big goal, is to get out into buildings, get to departments across the district. I think people often say that, administrators lose touch with what's going on in the classroom, what's going on in different departments, and so I want to always make sure that I can intelligently articulate what's going on and why. And another goal of mine is that every building I go to, if a student calls me by name, I know that I'm getting into that building enough. And I had the opportunity recently at McKinney Elementary to be part of a fourth grade reading group. It was a group of fourth grade boys that were kind of struggling. Teacher had the idea and reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to do a book study with a group of fourth grade boys? And it ended up being with the class and a couple of classes. So I got to read a book and then go in, and we had questions that we got to discuss and talk through it. One of the best days of my entire school year was doing that book talk with these fourth graders. And they were prepared because the superintendent was coming. Right. It was a big deal, and that was a motivator that the teacher used to get these boys interested. And they did a fantastic job. Another highlight was actually this week. I had a sixth grade student from a middle school who wrote me a letter, an email, and it was all the reasons why she wanted me to call a snow day. And everything from mental health to time with family and friends to, a way to release anxiety. Anyhow, it was so well written, and I had the opportunity to respond, and then I went over and met the student at the middle school.
That's why you had a snow day.
Yeah, not yet, but I told her there's still time. And then two other things I think I want to highlight. One, we recently had a CTE community advisory meeting. We had about 50 members in the community come, and we had students showcase our CTE programs. And we have some amazing CTE programs in our district. We did have to reduce some through the budget cuts. However, that is a big part of Yelm Community Schools, has always been, and I think will continue to be. And our students did a great job showcasing the programs, what they learn, certifications that they can get, and pathways onto a career or college or vocational school. And it was community members from all aspects of our community in Thurston County. And it was really impressive to see how many people showed up for that. The last thing I think I'll highlight is unified basketball. This is basketball for our students with special needs. And if you haven't been to a unified basketball game, it will be the greatest event that you attend. Last Saturday was at North Thurston. This Saturday it's at Olympia High School. And then the following Saturday it'll be at Yelm. And so all of our schools that have unified programs, and basically what it is it's students with special needs and peer mentors playing on a basketball team together against other schools. And to see the joy in their faces, the way they celebrate, the way they dance after they score, it is It will be your favorite event that you attend in school if you have an opportunity, and so I would encourage people to go.
And the stands are packed.
Yes.
I think they get to make up like names for themselves.
Yes.
And so then the announcers are calling them, and it is quite something.
Great. Well, gentlemen, we've come to the end of another discussion. It's been a great one. Thank you for your time again, and good luck with everything that's coming up in the future. And thank you for watching. Remember, if you're the parent of a preschool child, please read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to prepare them for their education. And while you're at it, throw in some simple number and counting games to get them a little bit interested in math too. If you're the parent of a school-age child, please get involved with your child's education. There are many ways that you can volunteer. Talk to your child's teacher or look at the website. Talk to the principal about opportunities for how you can be engaged in your child's education. For those of you in Yelm, there's a levy coming up. Please get information about the importance of a levy, and regardless of your decision, we do encourage you to please vote. It's important. For all of us here at Thurston Community Media and for our guests, the superintendents, thanks for watching. We'll see you again in the spring on the next edition of Superintendents Roundtable.